It's the season preview for Pacers power forwards. Deeper dives on Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin, a little bit of Kendall Brown and James Johnson, and a little bit of the two-way guys. We'll get to all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Friday. Congrats. You made it through the week, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we are doing Power Forward Season Preview, or the What's the Big Deal series, as I've been calling it, asking a question about a big deal, or in some cases today, big deals plural, for Pacers players at a certain position. Power forwards, Pascal Siakam and Obi Toppin. Lots to discuss there. A lot less to discuss with James Johnson and Kendall Brown. So we'll sneak the two-way guys into that part, specifically Tristen Newton and Enrique Freeman, and a little bit of Quenton Jackson. Looking forward to getting into lots of guys here today. Hopefully this does not sound rushed. I only say that because I recorded this whole episode already and the audio was crap and it was skipping around. So hopefully my stuff works this time and it sounds really good. But if it sounds like I rushed through a point, it's because I've already said it in my head, and I'll probably be more concise the second time, but I will make it better than the first one. Let's start with Pascal Siakam. We already talked about him a little bit this offseason on the Veterans Preview episode with TJ McConnell and James Johnson. Today, I want to dive into something else that I think is very interesting regarding Pascal Siakam in his second season with the Pacers, and that is his passing ability. What passing chops can Pascal Siakam show in year two with the Pacers? And I already alluded to this in that first veteran preview episode about passing with him a little bit, that this would be my question. But what really got the gears turning on this is you look at Siakam's stats per game, fine assist numbers. No one thought he was a bad passer by any stretch of the imagination. But if you look at his per game, per 36, pick whatever per rate assist stat, his passing output in terms of creation for others was the lowest it's been since 2019-20 with Toronto. Now, the Raptors had Lowry, DeRozan, and then Van Vliet, Lowry, like lots of other guards playing with Siakam back then. It's not like shocking his numbers were lower at the time, but then they got into the 4s and 5s, and then they were back below 4 with the Pacers last year. And that does make sense. I'm not saying that's a problem. The Pacers have lots of other guards who can create for others. Haliburton, Nembhard, McConnell, of course, chief among them. This isn't some shocking thing, but it does reveal to me is he has the ability to do more. And I wonder what kind of exploring can be done or fit or just any sort of slight alterations to make the Pacers better that can be done with Pascal Siakam and his passing ability. And then what really got me churning in on this and thinking more about it was Rick Carlisle talking about the way he wants his team to play. Very similar to last year when the Pacers led the league in passing. They want to be a high passing team, not high assist team, although that is related, but high, like literally volume of passes, number of passes thrown in a game. And to be a high pace and high tempo offense, that's like a requirement, right? Because the ball, if I throw a ball, that is faster than any person running with the ball or dribbling or whatever. Passing is faster. It keeps the ball moving faster. A defense can't rotate to keep up with the ball as much as they can a person. So that makes a lot of sense in principle and practice. What does that mean for Siakam, a guy who isn't as spaced out all the time and all this stuff and has shown better passing before? So that's what I wanted to explore, is where specifically does this come from him for a team that led the league in passes last year by a little bit over the Kings, led the playoffs in passing by a ton last year. The Pacers weren't even close to anyone else in passes per game last year. How does that actually blend in with Siakam, what he does, the speed of his ball movement? Can he be more of a passer? And the other question we'll get to in a minute is, does he need to be? Does it actually matter what his passing numbers settle in at, given what this team actually is, right? Given especially that his numbers dipped for the lowest point for the last 5 years, right? I think it's pretty obvious he can be more as a passer. You dig through, for example, last year when he would play with Tyrese Haliburton, his assists per 100 possessions were 4.5-ish, a little under that. And he played without Tyrese Haliburton, it was a little over 7.5, right? So clearly he can create more, especially for others when he's asked to. And the impetus is, hey, you are the current only star on the floor, you do it, right? The only two players on the Pacers with a higher assists per 100 when Haliburton was on the floor were the two you'd expect, Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell. Siakam is probably their third best creator in the Sans Haliburton group. And again, he should not supplant either of those two on that list, but him climbing up higher is obviously a good thing. And the other reason I wonder what the Pacers would explore with Pascal Siakam, the passer, and where is looking at who he frequently connected with last year. 31 assists was his most to any one player on the Pacers. I'm sure you can guess that was Tyrese Haliburton, but Turner and Nesmith and Nembhard all right between the mid-20s, 22 to 28 for all of them. So he can really connect with anybody, right? High-low stuff with Turner, Haliburton as a screener. They're overloading this side of the floor. He can find Nesmith or Nembhard spacing, or if he was on occasion involved with Nembhard, right? Clearly there's chemistry there. It's not like Siakam is only a good passer in these very limited play types or actions where he knows he's going to be passing or he knows where his link-up partner will be. I certainly don't consider him like diamond up guys cross court, like creative passer, but in situations, he's like a Darren Collison passer to me. In situations where the pass is part of the flow of the offense and he knows it's there, he can hit it very consistently and easily. And I think that's a very good skill. So the question will be, how much is that something the Pacers need him to do? And how much more advanced can he become in those ways? Because part of what made him a better passer and part of what was required of him last year for the Pacers is once Buddy Hield was traded away, the Pacers did not have that kind of off-ball threat. And Tyrese Haliburton had to become it at times, right? That was part of his growth in February and March when his numbers were different, was him talking about operating in those roles. He's their biggest off-ball threat now. He's got to learn to do some of those ghost screens. He's got to learn to move in those situations while Siakam has the ball. And sometimes a lot of times he would actually set a screen, and then he's got to figure out where to go, and the defense has to react, and Siakam's got to feel that out. Training camp will help with that, all sorts of stuff. But it's not just him that Siakam was setting up really well. He clicked really well with a lot of the starters. Now, his top assists target that was not a starter was Jalen Smith at 11. Everybody else was below 10. So there's some level of, if he is with second units or he's playing without Haliburton with different mixing and matching groups, maybe there's not as much to his connection with other guys. But I do think he has enough variety and skill as a passer that he's shown in Toronto. Not as somebody they should be saying, Pascal, here's the ball at the top of the key, go create. But enough that within the flow of the offense, or when the matchup dictates it, or when there's a switch, or whatever variety of reasons, the Pacers flow into something where Siakam's the ball handler about to initiate. Can he get his assist numbers up? Can he be used in that sort of way? Because the way he plays means his assists are going to be that way spread out. When he gets it at the elbow, he can connect with Myles Turner for some high-low stuff. When he attacks in pick and roll or whatever, he can either hit the big man rolling or hit the popping guard. And he can hit the shooters, whoever they may be. It's not like he's totally inept in that way too. So the fact that it's such an even spread from player to player, and the fact that he had way better numbers with Haliburton off the floor makes me think there's a chance that next year he's more involved as a passer next year, especially if Haliburton has to do some off-ball stuff again. And that goes back to my first question for Siakam in the veteran questions episode, which was, what's his connection with Haliburton going to grow into in year 2 with a training camp under their belts? Those could be very connected questions, right? If a lot of his passing goes that way, especially if Haliburton can provide some off-ball gravity as a spacer in some way, right? It just does a ton for the team if Siakam is a tick better or a tick more connected as a passer for the team. And I don't think he's a ball stopper in any way, but if the team's going to want to lead the league in passing and keep it moving and keep their best players involved in actions that forces the defense to react and think and rotate, having Siakam being able to do more in that way will be an interesting question and kind of the next ascent of his offense with this team, because even with his shot diet, which is not considered like these are the most efficient shots on the floor, he's an incredibly efficient player. He's hard to guard. He's got size. If he can add passing in that way, it's just really hard to defend him, especially with centers when that's going on. And so I wonder how his passing ups after a training camp. I wonder how his passing level ups heading into a season where they know what he can provide, and how it ups with Haliburton, presumably fully healthy. I think that will be a fascinating trend to watch this season for a guy who has shown statistically more levels of setting up other players to score. Let's talk about Obi Toppin, who has a much wider scope of questions that I'm going to ask for the season. I'm kind of cheating by doing that. What's the big deal for Obi Toppin should not be what's the big deals, but I'll explain why I did it when we get going there in just a second. Before we talk some Obi Toppin, we need to talk about the good folks over At Gametime, the best way to get tickets to the sports, theater, music, comedy events, whatever, near you, because everything you would need in a ticket buying website or app is right there with Gametime. They have super deals, the best way to get the best deal and best seats wherever you're going. Great prices, seat views before you buy. I used it in Barclays Center. It was spot on. Their lowest price guarantee means they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets in the same section or else for less elsewhere. Event cancellation protection, job loss protection, everything you'd want in a ticket buying app. You can toggle off hidden fees so you see the total up front. It's the best. And you can even use their new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. No more fluff. They cut that out for you so you can search through thousands of the best tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account on Gametime, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Hopefully this sounds and looks good after my complete flub of a first attempt at recording this exact podcast and my first time doing it. That Siakam segment was longer. More concise, Tony. Here I come. Second listen for you today should be Locked On NBA to hear my little scuffed up microphone with Wes Goldberg as we talk about injuries already hitting the league. What team's going to be the most impacted? We kind of agreed on that. We talk about buying or selling, key quotes from media days, Julius Randle, Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, LeBron, all sorts of key stuff. And then we power rank at the end, as we do on every Friday, our most intriguing preseason games from the weekend, because by the time you're listening to this, they already could have started preseason NBA hoops. The NBA is officially back. Also, Locked On Women's Basketball, because Caitlin Clark is the Rookie of the Year. Congrats to her. That was a formality. I'm surprised it wasn't unanimous. Let's keep rolling here on Power Forwards, talking about Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin was among the hardest players for this. I had a lot of trouble with Aaron Nesmith, as I mentioned last week, coming up with a big question. And I had a lot of trouble with Obi Toppin, too, because of what he is, right? He was a very, very solid bench player. His skill set fits extremely well with the Pacers. In fact, he probably fits better with the Pacers than any other team, which makes him more valuable to them than other places. And he got way better as a shooter. That changed the trajectory of how I felt about him as a player, which doesn't actually matter for basketball, but it also changed the perception of the lineups he fit in with and the players he fit with, which does change his basketball perception. He went from a guy that the thought was before the season, wow, he's going to fit great with Haliburton, to wow, Obi Toppin fits with everybody. McConnell as the one, Nembhard as the one. No point guard. Doesn't matter. If you can shoot, you help. And he helped in a lot of those lineups. Credit to him for getting a lot better as a shooter. And yet, Obi Toppin, big picture to dive into why I broke this segment up the way I did into these little questions is a lot of the questions I did to do my what's the deal with Toppin were like, is he a solid bench player with limits, or is he more than that? And that could be a number of stats. That could be a number of things, kind of like I did with Mathurin. Is because that kind of stuff is relevant to him closing games. And we'll get to why I'm bringing that up in a second later. It's also relevant to knowing if he can play the five more often than he has in the past, right? If he's more than a solid bench player with some limits. It also matters a great deal to figure out exactly what Obi Toppin is and where he can help, because Jarris Walker is ascending and is potentially a good player. And if he's going to play the four or Ben Shepherd's going to play and it's all going to piece together, knowing exactly how much Obi Toppin you need, if any, is extremely important, right? Learning a lot about Obi Toppin this year is an important thing, even though he's probably the 8th, 7th, 9th guy, whatever, on the team. So I have a lot of little questions that will help me clarify those things. And I'm actually going to work backwards, because my last note was related to everything that I typed down originally, but it really ties this whole kind of segment together. Because last year, Obi Toppin, despite being in the rotation every game, he played all 82. He was good in the playoffs, right? Had a good impact season for the Pacers. They paid him like a player who's a good bench player. He was 12th on the team in clutch minutes per game, right? In moments where the game was on the line or it was tight late, Obi Toppin did not play as much, 1.8 minutes per game in those situations. And that essentially suggests to me that from like the 5-minute to 3-minute mark of close games, they were comfortable playing him, and then not as much the rest, right? He was behind lots of guys in those clutch minutes moments, and the top 5 were roughly the starters, and Ben Shepherd was really high up. Bruce Brown is really high up because nobody could do what Bruce Brown could do when he was on the team. That has since changed, especially with Nembhard becoming a better player. But that was very revealing to me that there's very few lineups where it's like Obi Toppin is the best player at something that we as the Pacers cannot get from anything else and get extra utility from that guy. It's very rare. There are some teams that he closed and provided those things against Atlanta every time, against Philly a few times, right? He did close games. I'm not trying to dump on the guy. I'm just explaining what got me to discussing Obi Toppin this way. So one thing that's going to matter, I think, is figuring out how real Obi Toppin's shooting is, because he was very good as a shooter last year, 40.3%. That's great. That ascent over 40% is a critical mark. He did it for a full season and shot well in the postseason, right? And it was one season. So it's fair if some people said, I don't believe it, I would say I get it. It's only one season. I do believe that Obi Toppin's shot is really good and real now because of how much of his technique changed last year, right? This wasn't just the guy kept doing the same thing and all of a sudden they were going in more, which that does happen with reps. But he went through with coaches, with Rick, learning how to decelerate more and balance more, and shoot better and be more squared up. And that clearly helped him. You could watch the games and be like, wow, smooth shooter. This is great. It was huge for the Pacers that he became that kind of player. So I believe the shooting is real, but I would like to see what it settles in at. Can he have 2 straight seasons over 40%? How does the defense react to a full season of data of that? What does it look like with different lineups? He was starting for a lot of last season, right? I believe he's a good shooter. The technique change really sells it, but how good? How real is it? And as a follow-up to that is, can he up the volume? What is that? What are those numbers look like for Obi Toppin? And I thought that because if you dive back into old Obi Toppin seasons, right? Last year, best shooting season of Obi Toppin's career, undisputably. He would say that. I would say that. He took the most threes he's ever taken and made the highest percentage. Great win, best shooting season. And yet, he took 253 threes last season and 247 his final season with the Knicks. He took 5.3 threes per 36 minutes with the Pacers. He took 8.5 threes per 36 minutes his final season with the Knicks. That's a much higher volume. Now, granted, it's fair to ask, should he be taking more or is he taking the right amount? Because he was very efficient last year. In fact, you can go dive in to his true shooting percentage and see that, last season was his most efficient season by a lot. Maybe he should not change his shot diet at all. But if he truly can hit 40% from deep, if he can up his volume to 8.5 per 36 and do that, that's a very good shooter. Now, that's a big ask, but that's kind of something I wonder about. Could that be the way that Toppin becomes a guy that closes more often than he did last year? It's like, he's one of the best 5 shooters on the team, no doubt. He should close this game, right? That would be very interesting to me. But it's fair to ask if I just said something dumb. Should he be upping the percentage of his shots? He shouldn't be shooting more often. I think he shoots the right amount. So the only way he could get up more threes is to in turn take less twos. And last year, his 3-point attempt rate was 43.7%. That last season with the Knicks, it was 58.9. I think one difference this year that might force him to up his 3-point attempt rate a little bit is he played with Jalen Smith last year, who could shoot and space it out sometimes. Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman kind of can't do that as much. So I think that might force Obi Toppin to be a spacer at times. But if he ups that a ton, he's getting rid of his gifts as, a rim runner and a super athletic straight line guy that can jump out of the gym. And without those, he's just defended way differently. So the balance of this will be interesting, but I do think there's more to explore from him from a volume perspective. Another small question to add to that 3-point stuff is, what is the path to better Obi Toppin defense? Because I think the answer and the actual question I've typed down is the path to better Obi Toppin defense just better rebounding? And let me be clear. I think Obi Toppin was a better rebounder last year for the Pacers than anything I saw on the tape watching him play for the Knicks, right? I think he got better as a rebounder last year. The numbers don't bear that out, right? Per 36 minutes, last year, 6.7 rebounds for Toppin. His first 2 seasons with the Knicks were over 7, and his last season with the Knicks was 6.4, largely spearheaded by a big dip in offensive rebounding that final season with the Knicks. Last year with the Pacers, 1.8 offensive rebounds per 36, his second best ever, but he had a career low 4.9 defensive rebounds per 36. I'm using per 36 because he played way different minutes per games with these 2 teams. Now, the reason his defensive rebounding is different is because of the Pacers' priorities after misses and running, and they have other rebounders crashing, and who's coming from the corners, and Toppin's way. Here he goes, the straight line speed demon. Whoop, there he goes. So I don't know how much he should crash and how much that trade-off would actually help the Pacers. But he is a good rebounder. He does have that athleticism, especially when he gets the read, and I wonder if that can be an explored way to help him finish defensive possessions, because his ability to stay in front of guys and move side to side is pretty poor. I think he's about as good, if not better, defending 5s than he is defending 4s. And so if he can be more impactful on the glass, that offsets a lot of the stuff that he has issues with on that end with side-to-side movement, things like that. Because, again, open floor, straight line running, jumping up and down. He's a monster. He's still the only player to this day that I've seen. He jumped up. I don't know how many people remember this. He jumped up for an alley-oop in a game, and it got deflected before it got to him. So he had to get back on defense. Instead of landing and turning around, he caught the rim and kept used his momentum on the circle to turn his body around while holding the rim and then let go and ran back because he turned himself around in the air. I've never seen someone do that. It was a much faster way for him to get back. It was really cool. So anyway, I say all this to say this guy who's such a freak athlete, really good shooter, what kind of tweaks can he make to add niche and impact? Because is there anything Obi Toppin can do from a utility perspective to be in niche lineups, to be a guy who there are more situations where you say Obi Toppin should close this game instead of whoever? Now, that's what I would wonder about his season. And those kind of little questions I have about his rebounding and shooting, volume and accuracy would answer some of those. If he's a 40% shooter on higher volume, yeah. If they need 3 points or they're down 6 late, he should play. Or if he can take 9 threes per 36 at the same accuracy, he should, similar kind of deal. If he's a better rebounder, you're more comfortable putting him on a center, closing and having him be the 5 in closing lineups like he was against Atlanta very often last year in that once or twice against Philly. That would really matter. So that is something I wonder with Obi is can he elevate his role or elevate his level of play to an extent that really cements him in his role and really proves that he is a long-term, very good fit and role with this team. But what can it be, right? What can it be? Because a lot of times with Siakam, Nesmith, Turner, even Jalen Smith at times, and the potential upcoming ascent of Jarris Walker, you wonder where Obi fits into a lot of that mix. Not that he shouldn't play. Again, I think Obi Toppin's really good, and he's on the best possible fit for him. There's just lots of moving parts there, and I wonder what the next steps are for Mr. Toppin. Let's squeeze in 5 guys into this final segment because James Johnson, I can't fit a full segment of James Johnson talk in to close out this episode. Everybody, I very quickly need to talk to you about the great people over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. Vikings undefeated, Colts looking a little better. And if you want to get in on all that action, hop onto America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel, because when you get that hunch, it comes for everybody. In the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more. So you can be as informed as possible of what's going on, when it's happening, and how it can inform your gut feelings. And you can see all that in the same place, on the same page where you place your bets on FanDuel, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel. That's FanDuel, but you can find on FanDuel.com. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen on this lovely Friday. Make your second listen any of the teams involved in the trade, the Hornets, the Knicks, or the Timberwolves. Cat is officially a Knick. It happened. Or Locked On Celtics, Locked On Nuggets. Why? Because they play. If you're listening to this before noon on Friday, congrats. You can listen to this before the NBA restarted. If you didn't, games are happening in Abu Dhabi. It's time. That was my hopeful finals last year. I'm looking forward to that game. Let's close out with this other motley crew. James Johnson was going to be the last guy here. What is there to say? I mean, there's no basketball questions to ask. He played 47 minutes for the Pacers last year. And now with Furphy and Jarris and Wiseman in the front court-ish mix, might be even less. He dunked and it was a big deal. James Johnson is a vet and a locker room guy and a toughness provider, and he gives his teammates confidence, and that has tangible value. It just does not really result in basketball for him specifically. So I don't really have any question. I mean, maybe what's his highlight of the season going to be? How many points is he going to score in total? Those are the questions I have, and they're mostly facetious. Kendall Brown is an interesting one too, because everybody has the same questions about him that they've had since the Pacers drafted him. What ball skills do you have beyond your athleticism? I thought after his rookie year, he might have a path to being a pretty good defender. I still think that's his best end of the floor right now. He's okay on that end, but can he really pop into a shutdown guy? He looks a little taller, seeing him in camp. He's obviously extremely fast, can jump out of the gym. If that defense doesn't come, can he be efficient? Can he make some shots? Can he finish plays as a shooter or in other ways, right? That was a big struggle for him in Summer League, was finishing plays. He had one nice game and the rest were all kind of wobbly, right? He's got to show something from a skill perspective. The athleticism can't It's very hard for athleticism to carry you to a 3-year career. Being really jumpy and being good on the glass and being efficient, Alize Johnson made a whole career out of that. Like, that matters, right? Can Kendall Brown, who is more perimeter based than Alize Johnson, can he do more than that? If not, he might not make the team. Who knows what the Pacers will do with their final roster spot. So there's not enough to talk about with those two guys to merit a full segment. I'm not going to spend any more time on either of them. I think everybody gets the deal. So we're going to talk about the two-way guys. How about that? This is the best spot to fit them in. Let's start with Tristen Newton, because I've been thinking a lot about Tristen Newton recently, which says a lot about me and my brain power. So Tristen Newton, very good at UConn, right? 2 national championships, played different roles on those teams, was asked to have a different shot profile, made different players look good, got other guys into the NBA. Now he's in the NBA. And I really liked when they picked him, because even if he fails, that's the type of archetype I'm going to bet on as a franchise, is big, tall guard who can do lots of stuff, right? 1 year he was a really good passer. 1 year he was a really good shooter. He's always been kind of shifty. He can connect with all his teammates. Play call, great. This is all awesome. Played with another NBA guard, it's Stephon Castle. Played with NBA bigs both years. I don't need to sell you on Tristen Newton. They picked him. We talked about him a lot. What I wonder is the answer is there is, but I don't know the programs very well. But is there a more drastic style change than UConn to the Pacers? UConn is much slower and much more play call, technique, execution's going to make us clobber everybody system, where the Pacers are much more fast-paced, random, read, react, defense has to rotate. Oh, there's the opening, there's a basket. And Tristen Newton really struggled in summer league, and I wonder how much of that was that adjustment I just described. Him going, wow, this is way faster. And so maybe that clicks at some point where he catches up to the speed, whether that's with the Mad into the Pacers, and then looks way better than he did in the summer sessions. He was already getting to the line a lot in those games. So I still have faith that a jumbo creator type can be a good player, especially at pick 49. We have to see it because the summer league wasn't really there. Enrique Freeman, I wonder if he can be more than that kind of poacher effort guy type, which sounds like a negative description of a player to call someone that. It's not at all. I mentioned Alize Johnson already on this podcast. That's what he was, right? He got a bunch of rebounds. He battled harder than other people. A lot of his buckets were dirty, scoop it up in the right place at the right time buckets. Guess what? Those count for the same number of points. And effort plays absolutely matter. And effort is clearly a skill in the NBA, and Enrique Freeman's got it, man. That dude battled in summer league. He was in the right places. He disrupted plays. The ball hit the rim. He had a really good chance to get it. He finished effectively. I'm a believer in that kind of guy, and it seems like the Pacers might have been too. The delay, I still wonder. I don't know this. I wonder if the delay of his two-way was them considering him for a roster spot instead of the two-way before Swider came into the mix. So I think Enrique Freeman can be solid, but what can he show beyond the stuff that I know for a fact from summer league, from college, from his size that he's going to be good at? He's going to be a pretty good rebounder, and he's going to get some 30 buckets every game. Can he do more than that? Can he show some shooting? Can he show some nice shuffle passes? I noticed that at Akron. He took trail threes as he tried to evolve into a more modern big his final season with the Zips. Can any of that stuff become part of his NBA palette? Can that be part of how he plays in the pros? Or again, this is not a negative. This could be an NBA player alone, but is he just going to be this scoop up the loose ball basket or flash in the middle of the paint basket, just a poacher effort guy type? And that player ends up being popular and good anyway. So I'll be very curious where his career goes. And Quenton Jackson, can he win over fans? Not really. I mean, I'm obviously higher on him than most fans. I really want to see what he can do defensively this year. I mean, he's such a beast with the ball. He can get to the paint. He's so fast with the rock. If you watched him with the Mad Ants last year, you'd have no questions about what he can do. Very good driver, good finisher in those spaces. After his first summer league game, he did all that stuff. So over a full season, can he guard, right? Can that shiftiness and athleticism lead to good perimeter prowess on defense? Can he shut down G League guards? Can he do anything in the NBA? Because guys who can drive like he can, they can provide rim pressure and value in the NBA, but it has to require a certain amount of spacing or the right guys around him in a way that isn't the case for, full-time NBA players. So I'll be curious if he can guard better to help him get to the pros maybe at some point, or if he can add even more to his driving and finishing. Very good at getting to the rim, not the best finisher, but I think Quenton Jackson could one day be a good player. The centers are all that's left. We'll do that for this next Tuesday. Next Monday, we'll preview the preseason. Let's go. It's time. The Pacers play preseason games next week. No more predicting what could happen this season or asking questions about what players could do. Instead, it's very soon about to be time to see it happen and talk about what's actually happening. I can't wait. I hope you can either. Hope you guys enjoyed this show. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East, and this podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. That's the best way to reach me if I said something dumb or you just want to chat about stuff, or commenting down below if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you on Monday.